Welcome to Stillwater Chronicles. Tonight, we settle into a story about a woman who walked out of the mountains and out of time. There is a particular kind of quiet that exists only at altitude. It is not the quiet of an empty room or the quiet of a library after closing. It is older than that. It is the quiet of stone and thin air, and the slow indifference of mountains that were here long before any of us arrived, and will remain long after we are gone. If you have ever stood above the tree line and listened, really listened, you will know what I mean. The wind moves differently up there. It does not rush. It does not push. It simply passes through, as though the mountain has allowed it. And then it is gone, and the silence that follows is total. That is where Tomàs had spent the last 3 days. He was a search and rescue coordinator, had been for 22 years. He knew these Pyrenean slopes the way other men know the rooms of their own house. The loose rocks near the eastern col, the way fog gathered in the lower bowl before noon, the particular angle of light in the late afternoon that could make a perfectly clear trail look like shadow. He knew this mountain. He had trusted it, in the careful, unsentimental way of a man who respects dangerous things. The missing hiker, a French tourist, 43 years old, last seen on the GR11 trail 2 days prior, had not been found. Not yet. The third morning had begun gray and still. The team had split into 2 groups before first light. Tomàs sat in the mobile command unit with a cup of coffee going cold and a radio that crackled in intervals. And he listened to the mountain and waited. At 7:14 in the morning, one of his team checked in. They had found someone. Not the tourist, someone else. He pulled on his jacket and walked up to meet them. The trail bent around a long shoulder of the hillside, and then opened onto a small plateau, flat, rocky, with a view out over the valley below, that on a clear day was remarkable, and on a gray day like this one, was simply vast and blank, like a page waiting to be written. The team stood in a loose cluster near the edge of the path, and in the middle of them, sitting on a flat boulder, with her pack resting against her knee, was a woman. Tomàs slowed as he approached. She was perhaps 30 years old. Her hair was dark, pulled back simply. Her face was calm, unhurried in a way that seemed slightly out of place for someone who had been found alone on an exposed trail in the early morning. She wore a pale green anorak with a zip collar and a small chest pocket, the kind that had been practical in a decade before practicality became fashionable. Her boots were leather, well worn at the toe, with metal eyelets and thick, waxed laces. Her trousers were canvas, not synthetic. Her pack, a large external frame rucksack in orange nylon, sat beside her with a calm solidity. Tomàs knew gear. He had handled enough of it over 22 years. The evolution of materials, the shift from frames to frameless, from cotton to cordura to merino, to know with a quiet certainty he would not yet name that what this woman was wearing had not been manufactured in this decade, possibly not in the last 3. He crouched in front of her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, in Spanish first, then in French. She shook her head. Her eyes, when they met his, were clear and present. Not lost, not afraid. "I'm fine," she said in French. "I think I got turned around in the mist. I've been walking since yesterday." She paused, looked at the sky and then back at him. Is there a refuge nearby? I was supposed to meet my husband at the refuge de la Brèche by the evening. He'll be worried. Tomàs said nothing for a moment. Can I ask your name? He said. She told him. He wrote it in his notebook. He looked at it for a moment. Then he stood and walked a few meters away and radioed base. Run a name for me, he said, and read it out. The radio crackled. He waited. The mountain was quiet around him. One of his team members was handing the woman a cup of water from a flask. She accepted it with both hands, and the small, specific gesture of someone who has been cold for a long time. The radio crackled again. Tomàs. It was Lucia, his coordinator at base. Her voice had a texture he recognized, the careful flatness of someone constructing their words before they said them. That name is in the database. Go ahead. Missing persons, reported 1983. She was walking the GR11 trail with her husband. He made it out. She didn't. The file was never closed. Tomàs looked at the woman on the boulder. She was watching him. Her expression had not changed. Age at time of disappearance, he said. 29. He kept his voice level. And there's a photograph on file. There is. Tomàs. A pause. It's her. He stood still for a moment with the radio in his hand, and the gray sky above him, and the mountain quiet in every direction. He was not a man who reached for explanations quickly. He had learned, in 22 years, that the mountain sometimes did things that could not be explained in the moment, and that the most important thing in those moments was not to explain them, but to observe them, to stay present, to do your job. He walked back to her. We're going to take you down to base, he said. Get you warm. Something to eat. She nodded and began to stand, and reached for her rucksack with the automatic ease of someone who had been carrying it for only a day. Not 40 years. One day. My husband, she said again. Is there a way to reach the refuge? He'll have been there since last night. Tomàs looked at her. Her husband. He had read the file 2 days ago, had read all the old files when they opened the operation, the way he always did, working through the history of who had gone missing here, who had come back, who had not. Her husband had come back. He had come back alone in October of 1983 and given a statement at the gendarmerie in the valley and been taken to hospital for exposure and exhaustion and survived. He had married again in 1991. He had died 15 years ago, a Tuesday in November, cardiac arrest, at home in Lyon, at the age of 71. He was not at the refuge. He was not anywhere. Tomàs looked at the woman beside him, who was 29 years old and had dark hair and clear eyes, and was wearing hiking gear from 1983, and was asking about a man who had been dead for 15 years. She looked exactly like a photograph taken at this trailhead in the summer of the year. She disappeared. Let's get you down first, he said. We can sort everything out at base. She accepted this. She fell into step beside him, and they began to walk down the trail. The rest of the team followed, loosely arranged in the quiet formation they adopted when no longer actively searching. That slow, purposeful descent that said the operation had shifted, though what it had shifted to, none of them could quite say. They walked in near silence for a long while. Tomàs walked beside her and tried to notice things without letting her see that he was noticing. The way she breathed, steady, deep, the breathing of someone at altitude who is accustomed to it. The way she moved on the trail, careful, sure-footed, but with the particular assurance of someone walking a route they half remember. Her boots made the same sound on the path as any boot would. Scrape and press, scrape and press. And she was real and solid, and her breath made small white clouds in the cold morning air. And she was not a ghost, he told himself. She was a person. He was not a man who believed in ghosts. "How long have you been up here?" he asked, keeping his voice conversational. "We came up on the 14th, she said. "It was beautiful. Hardly anyone on the trails." He did not ask what month or year she meant. He thought about asking. He formed the question in his mind, turned it over, felt its weight. He imagined her answer. He imagined the fraction of a second between the question and the answer. That window of complete uncertainty. And he found that he was not ready to close it. The mountain was quiet. The trail descended in long, slow switchbacks. The valley came into view below them, a thin thread of road, a cluster of buildings at the tree line, the white flash of a river, the ordinary world laid out below like a map, the kind of world where years meant something, where time moved in one direction, where people aged and died and left files and databases that no one expected to need. "It's a good mountain," she said quietly, looking down at the valley. "It is," Tomàs said. "I didn't think I'd get lost. I know this trail." "The mist comes in fast," he said. "It happens to everyone." She nodded, apparently satisfied. She walked on. He walked beside her and thought about her husband, about the file, the photograph, the gendarmerie statement, the years that followed. He thought about the man in Lyon who had lived out an entire second life, married again, grown older, become someone new, while somewhere on this mountain, in some fold of time he could not name, this woman had been walking, still 29, still looking for the refuge, still expecting to see a face that had been gone from the world for 15 years. He thought about what it would mean to tell her. He thought about what it would mean not to. He had no answer for either. The base camp came into view, a cluster of vehicles and portable shelters at the edge of the road, a generator humming quietly, one of the medics standing outside with a jacket pulled across her shoulders. The world of radios and coffee and missing persons files, and the year it actually was. The woman stopped for a moment at the edge of the clearing. She looked at the vehicles, and at the equipment, and at the clothes the medic was wearing. And Tomàs watched her take it all in. Her face did not change exactly, but something in her expression, something in the stillness behind her eyes, shifted very slightly, the way a landscape shifts when a cloud moves across the sun, not dramatically, not violently, just a slow rearrangement of light and shadow. She looked at him. "Things have changed," she said, quietly, not as a question. Tomàs held her gaze. His throat felt briefly tight. "Yes," he said. "They have." She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked back at the mountain, at the trail they had just walked down. the shoulder of rock disappearing into gray cloud, the place where she'd been sitting when they found her. "I was only walking," she said. "I was only walking." And then the mist came in. "I know," he said. She nodded, slowly. And that was all. She walked into the camp. The medic met her with a blanket and a gentle voice and the careful language of someone trained to steady people without telling them more than they can hold. Tomàs stood at the edge of the clearing and watched and said nothing. Later, much later, after the debrief, after the calls, after the long drive back down the valley road with the mountain behind him in the rearview mirror, he sat in his car outside his own house and did not go in for a while. He thought about the map she had been carrying. He had seen it when she opened her pack at base. It had slid partway out, and he had caught a glimpse of it before she folded it away. A paper map. The old IGN series, the 1 to 50,000 scale, with the trail routes hand-marked in pencil and the contours printed in a faded brown ink. He hadn't needed to see the publication date. He knew those maps. He had learned to read on those maps. His first team leader had carried one just like it back in the early days, before the GPS units arrived. It had been a 1984 edition. He sat in his car with the engine cooling around him and the house dark and still before him. And he thought about a woman walking in the mist on a mountain in 1983, and a step she took, or a turn she made, or simply a moment in which the world arranged itself differently around her. And 42 years passed on one side of that moment, and none at all on the other. He did not know how such a thing could be. He was not sure he needed to. He thought about what she had said at the edge of the clearing. "I was only walking." And it struck him now, sitting in the quiet dark of the car, that this was perhaps the most honest description of it anyone could give. She had not done anything unusual. She had not sought anything out. She had simply walked, the way people have always walked in mountains. And the mountain had kept her, for a moment, or for 40 years, depending on which side of it you were standing on. He got out of the car. He stood in the driveway for a moment and looked up at the sky. It was clear now, at this lower altitude, stars visible, thin and cold, the kind of sky that makes the world feel very large. He could not see the mountains from here, but he could feel the direction of them, the way you can sometimes feel the presence of something large and quiet, even when it is out of sight. He thought, she will wake up tomorrow. She will wake up somewhere unfamiliar, in a year she cannot account for, and someone will have to sit with her and tell her about the decades she missed, the husband who came home without her, the life he built, the Tuesday in November, when it ended. Someone will have to hand her 42 years, one at a time, like stones. He was glad it was not him. He was also not entirely sure, as he walked toward his front door, that the distance between him and that woman was as great as he would like it to be. He had been on this mountain for 22 years, walking the same trails, noting the same stones, and the same angles of light. You could do that. Give your years to a place. Give it your attention and your trust, and never once consider that the place was also watching you, that the mountain kept its own account. That time, up there above the tree line, was not quite the fixed and certain thing it felt like from down in the valley. He put his key in the lock. He thought, I was only walking too. He went inside. He did not look back at the sky. And somewhere above the tree line, on a plateau of flat gray rock, with a view out over the valley, the mist moved slowly across the trail. Unhurried, patient, indifferent to calendars. And the mountain held its silence, the way it always had, and always would. The same trail, the same stone, the same thin air, waiting, perhaps, for the next step. Thank you for listening to Stillwater Chronicles, where even the oldest mountains keep the quietest secrets. If this stillness stayed with you, if the cold mountain air settled somewhere in your chest, then let it remain a little while longer. Some places hold on to us, not with cruelty, not with intention, simply because we walked through them and they remembered. Rest now. You are not lost.